Welcome to the Uncanny Academy of X-Men. I'm Jared.
And I'm Lad.
And today we are talking about the legendary, the mythic X-Men, the animated series.
Yes.
So this is quite possibly one of the best animated series I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And actually we've seen because Lad is familiar with this series, right?
Yes. Jared's been watching through the series, and I kind of jumped in for the Phoenix Saga. So that was my first time learning about what actually happens during it. And it was really, really great. Just from a complete newcomer's perspective, I really enjoyed it.
All right. This series ran from 1992 to 97, so it was fairly long. It was produced by Saban, the same place that does Power Rangers. Lad, your camera froze. Technical difficulties, everyone. All right, there you go. Now you're good. All
I'm
right.
back.
So yeah, it was produced by the same people that did Power Rangers.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Saban, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And then, like their comic counterparts, this show dealt with a variety of social issues and themes like Christianity, the Holocaust, AIDS, racism, etc., all the above. And then I think Lad and I can agree when his camera finally unfreezes that it has one of the best animated intros of all time. And that's including Justice League Unlimited and Batman the Animated Series.
You put it above those series?
No, I'm saying it's one of the best.
Oh, okay.
And that's including those because those are up there. Because there are a couple of shows that when you're watching on like a streaming service, you know how it has the whole skip intro? You do not click that with these shows.
The intro's really long though, but it's really good.
There have been talks to revive the series on Disney Plus.
That'd be incredible.
Particularly with Krakoa.
That'd be so cool.
It has faithfully adapted many of the famous storylines, and when they have deviated from them in some way, it's only improved them.
Mm-hmm.
Days of Future Past is an example of this.
Yeah.
It stands alongside Batman the Animated Series, JLU as one of the greatest comic book animated series of all time. Of course, I already said that. It had video game and comic book spin-offs.
Didn't know it had that.
The team is based on the designs by comic book artist legend Jim Lee, because before this he had his series, which is like X-Men #1, which was that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's just the comic that formed the poster. The episodes aired out of order because for some reason a lot of the series did that. Like Batman the Animated Series aired kind of the airing order is different than the order that's like on like HBO Max.
Really? They just kind of put them out just like, wow, that's kind of weird.
It had 2 endings because that doesn't look confusing at all. And it reused sound effects from Star Trek.
It did?
I'm like, wait a second. What sound effects are they talking about? I've never heard that.
Maybe like the door opening and closing sound, like the whoosh, or like
probably. Or Professor X's hover chair.
Yeah, I can imagine stuff like that.
It's not the first animated X-Men series. The prequel air quotes. So they had a pilot called Pride of the X-Men, except it's spelled Pryde, as in Kitty Pryde. It was going to be an animated series that basically had her as the protagonist, and we were viewing it through her eyes, because that's the way it was in the Claremont X-Men era. But instead, it was they did the X-Men animated series, and then we told it through the eyes of everyone's favorite mutant, Jubilee. And there's a Japanese version of the intro, and I watched it. It is badass, bro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just imagine. So, have you seen the intro for the X-Men anime?
No, I haven't actually. No.
I got to show you that some way. But anyway, it's totally animated up. It looks so cool.
That's cool. I gotta check it out for sure then.
All right. So I mentioned about how it's like inspired by the Jim Lee like designs, but it's also by the lineup of the team, because we have Cyclops, Jean Grey / Marvel Girl / Phoenix / Dark Phoenix. That's how I put it in here because she has all those titles.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny is that I love how in the intro it's like Wolverine, Cyclops, and it's like Jean Grey. She's the only one that doesn't have a code name.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of awkward.
I mean, Marvel Girl, maybe? Phoenix? I don't know what you're doing here, guys.
Right.
Beast, Wolverine, Storm, already mentioned Jubilee, who here's her here's the funny thing about this character, lad. Do you know how they tried to improve her in the comics? They made her a vampire.
Oh, how is that an improvement? Or?
No, it's not. And then they knew it was an improvement, so they undid it. And now she has an adopted baby that turns into a dragon. Because that makes sense.
Hey.
Yeah. Morph is basically like the X-Men version of Mystique, but Morph kind of goes rogue at some point. It's that famous meme from the show where Wolverine's going, Morph! Because in the first episode, he apparently dies.
Yeah.
And then Rogue, and then they have the whole episode that's her getting her powers. Now she has her in her costume from when she first showed up, the green tracksuit and everything. It's really dope. And Gambit, because it's Gambit and he's awesome. I really wish they did an X-Men Origins movie for him. I would love to do that movie. And then obviously Professor X. You can't leave out Professor X. He's the guy.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the interesting cameos that showed up in this. Spider-Man.
All right. Webhead.
Captain America. Colossus. Ms. Marvel.
Really?
And I because remember, Rogue got her powers from Ms. Marvel. Because what happened was, so Rogue's powers, to establish context, is that whenever she touches a mutant, she temporarily borrows their powers. The problem is with Ms. Marvel, the powers didn't go away. I think it's because Ms. Marvel's not a mutant, that somehow that screwed that up.
I see.
It could be any other explanation, but
right.
And it ends up putting Ms. Marvel in a coma.
Good job.
I'm like, yeah, all right, there you go. But that's where we get the whole Rogue has super strength and flies.
I see.
The Shi'ar Empire, who showed up in the Phoenix Saga, it's all the little alien people. The Hellfire Club, which are the people that look like they're out of 18th century England.
It was the Circle Club or something.
Yeah, the Inner Circle.
Yes, Jared, that's what they're called.
Emma Frost, before she was so central to the X-Men mythos, she was the White Queen. I'm like, when I say that was even before she could turn to diamonds.
That's crazy. Yeah,
that wasn't until Grant Morrison's run that he introduced the idea of what's called a secondary mutation, meaning people have two powers. Iceman, Bobby Drake showed up in this, and they make they make like references to, because he was on the Stan Lee lineup of X-Men. It was him, and we know this because we got embarrassed when we did the trivia game with Jenna. It's like, well, it wasn't Wolverine. It was Cyclops, Beast, Iceman, Angel, and I know there was
Girl.
I think there was Marvel Girl. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Lady Deathstrike, she's the girl with the really long nails, and it turns out she was Wolverine's ex-wife.
Is it because of like the whole like long claws thing? I mean, it's just
before that. Like, I think it's before that.
Really?
He went missing. I guess so. This is when Wolverine was in Japan because, and this is one thing they established in the movie called The Wolverine. He spent a crap ton of time in Japan, and what happened was he left. He had to go do something, and he never showed back up. And she got like involved with this group of people that like turned her into a cyborg. Cable.
Cable.
And
All right.
Cable was the one that was brought in. So he goes back in time to stop. I think it was it was the whole idea of the legacy virus. It was this virus that was wiping out mutant kind in the future. Because once again, whenever you look at any list of the worst things that happen to the X-Men, one of them is going to be the future.
Right.
Just the future. So he goes back in time to stop it from happening because it turns out it's released by Apocalypse. At least in the show. I'm not sure how it is in the comics. Bishop, he's the other time traveling dude. He's the one that they make the protagonist for Days of Future Past, because in the comics it was Kitty Pryde Shadowcat, but he goes back in time because he has information that Gambit's going to be the one who assassinates a U.S. senator and thus accelerates the Sentinel program and thus creates Days of Future Past. It turns out it was Mystique, and they stop her.
Oh.
Then we have Alpha Flight, which are the Canadian Avengers, and Wolverine spent a fair amount of time on this show, on that team, and they actually came back. They actually tried to kidnap him back into the team. Like, you're coming with us, sir. You're AWOL, absent without leave.
Yep.
Cannonball, he's basically a mutant that just flies and rams people. And then Dazzler, who's Britney Spears if she were a mutant. In other words, she's a pop singer, and her power is she can turn sound waves into light waves.
Oh.
So she's kind of like a cooler version of Jubilee. So let's take a look at the antagonists. So you have Magneto. You have the Friends of Humanity, and the Friends of Humanity are basically the X-Men version of the KKK.
What? But they have friends in their name.
Yeah, I know. It's very bad advertising. So you have Mastermind and the Hellfire Club / the Inner Circle. We already brought that up. That was the biggest weird thing, because I'm not used to seeing Emma Frost A as not a diamond and B as an antagonist. Because I knew she was an antagonist beforehand, because when you look at the comics, but I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm like, geez, Cyclops hanging out with Emma Frost now all of a sudden looks different. Shi'ar Empire, because part of the Dark Phoenix saga is, okay, so the Shi'ar come and they want to take out Jean, because as her time as Phoenix, so the Phoenix needs energy to survive. So what Jean did as the Phoenix, she was influenced by the Phoenix. She absorbed a sun and wiped out an entire race of aliens.
Mm-hmm.
So the Shi'ar.
But in the TV show, though, no one was hurt. There was not a single person
we saw.
I guess so.
In the comics, it was, but so.
Oh man.
So she gets abducted, but she and the X-Men get abducted by the Shi'ar. So they're gonna kill Jean, but then Professor X is like, okay, my X-Men versus 5 of your best warriors. Whoever wins keeps Jean. The X-Men
Whoever makes the most comic book sales wins.
Yeah, the X-Men get completely destroyed, and then Jean kills herself because she knows she's being taken over by the Phoenix again. She's like, all right, I'm just gonna blast myself. And then she stays dead for like the longest time, up until I think Hickman's X-Men. Actually, no, up until Grant Morrison's X-Men run, because it was during that they basically killed her again. Her basic thing is she comes back to life and dies. That's her thing at this point.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like we said in the Dark Phoenix saga on X-Men, the animated series, she comes back to life. They just hey, let's hold hands and we'll just bring her back
Phoenix.
Exactly. And she comes back to life. I wonder how many people think the actual storyline goes like that, and they're like, oh yeah, she survives, and then they actually read the comics. It's like, what?
Read the actual Dark Phoenix, and it's like, oh
yeah.
Oh, she commits space genocide. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So we mentioned Dark Phoenix was an antagonist, and we mentioned Lady Deathstrike. Apocalypse was a villain, and he was actually a pretty interesting one, because he was like the Thanos of that time, and that they spent I think it was season 2 building him up as a threat, kind of like they did with Thanos, and then he was the antagonist for I think a season or so. And then obviously he was the antagonist in the not that bad live action movie for Apocalypse. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty dope. And then Dr. Sinister, his whole thing is he clones people. He wants to build like the perfect mutant, and this comes into play during Hickman's X-Men run because he's the reason why they have the DNA samples of every mutant. Hence, which is why they're able to resurrect every mutant because that's part of the process. They create the eggs. Gold Balls, that's actually a mutant, creates the eggs, and then they're injected with the DNA to create an embryo, and then the embryo is made viable and sped up, and then Professor X uploads the mind of the person into the egg. It's a whole thing I talked about when I did Hawks and Pox. So Trask and the Sentinels were they're so like stereotypically robotic. They're like, I have apprehended the mutant. And I'm like,
yes.
Okay. Oh my God. They even had what's cool, a mother mold, which is a sentinel that makes sentinels.
Right. It was kind of like, I think even a little bit more derpy looking because it was just like a big one.
It was essentially a pregnant sentinel sitting on a throne.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
I'm like, oh, this I find it really hard to be intimidated by you.
Yeah.
And then we have Sabretooth. He showed up in an episode. I'm not sure if they played on the whole their brothers thing, but all I know is that they have a history and they hate each other.
Family.
Let's talk about the storylines adapted by this monumental work of art. Days of Future Past, I mentioned that, and they tweaked it a little bit, and it's kind of funny. Bishop goes back twice because he thinks he solved it. He goes back to the future, and then it turns out he didn't do anything. He goes back to the past again, does it again, and then comes back to the future, still didn't change anything.
Sounds like a comedy.
I know, it's like Back to the Future. Back to the Future genocide.
Yeah.
Then they did the whole Weapon X storyline, which is kind of establishing who Wolverine was and how he got his powers. In this, he didn't have bone claws.
Oh, okay.
In this, he got the claws because he was put in the tank and turned into the Wolverine dude. Then we have Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, which so far are my favorite arc of the series because it's like just so dope.
Mm-hmm.
X-Men #1, which is, and by X-Men #1 I mean the Stan Lee one, and that they have so basically the plot of that is Magneto hijacks a bunch of nukes and is going to nuke mankind, and the X-Men stop him. That was basically the plot of X-Men 1, and they had an episode that was basically that. Then we had the Legacy virus, which once again it's like mutant AIDS. And then there are many, many, many other storylines that I could go into, but it would take too long. It's basically anything from the Claremont era, which is like 80s to 90s, was pretty much to a degree put up in there. So, Lad, what do you think of the series? So, let me get your opinion as someone that hasn't watched all of this to a degree.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I came in and watched the Dark Phoenix saga, and it was honestly really good, better than what I expected. Because I was just thinking, it's an older animated show. It's gonna look kind of cheesy, like classic Transformers G1.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Or G.I.
When I saw
Joe.
the colors, G.I. Joe, yeah, it kind of looked like in that same era, He-Man and all that. That classic style of animation. But when we sat down and actually watched it, it was really compelling. The characters were well defined, had really cool designs for their outfits, and all the voice actors made each character distinct. And they had great personalities. They played off each other well, and the storylines they adapted, of course, were really excellent. But they did a really great job of adapting them. And watching Dark Phoenix Saga was like, it felt like I was watching a movie in the theaters, like how it played out from all the 4 or 5 episodes that it covered. It really just showed that entire narrative of one big adventure where the X-Men were trying to basically save one of their own, but they're put into an impossible scenario where there might not be a way to save Jean Grey. And just seeing how all the characters are put in different situations, it felt like dramatic. It didn't feel like it was like a baby kid show. Like it actually felt like a Clone Wars or something like that, where there's actual consequences to what everything was going on.
Yeah, it 100% does not seem like a kid's show when you're watching that.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it gets into the whole, it actually deals with plenty of adult themes like racism and such when you're watching the series. And that's one of the reasons why I like the series and still 100% maintain, and I've said this many times, that the X-Men are the gold standard for having political comics, but making it so that it doesn't turn people off. Because I feel like in any type of entertainment, that's always the risk you play with going political in any of these mediums, whether it be TV, comics, something like that, because you're gonna turn off people that don't want this. And in fact, I was just talking about this in my Politics of Hamilton the Musical class, and we were talking about how, among other things, like if the person really has a responsibility to weigh in on it. So it's one of those things that you're always riding a fine line. I think X-Men does that really, really well because it keeps it general. So that actually, here's what we talked about. We talked about how entertainment is supposed to be escapism. That's a purpose of it. But what I think X-Men does is they make it general enough that, yeah, if you wanted to see this just as a couple of really cool characters that have powers, yeah, you could 100% read it like that or watch it like that in this case. Or you could read it as an allegory for racism, which is what it is, but you could ignore the racism part and just say, hey, it's superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, you're right. It does a great job of having that deeper message in there if you actually look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, it's one of the things that like a lot of modern entertainment struggles with, particularly in the comic book industry, and I have some thoughts on that. But so Lad, did you see the third X-Men movie?
The original X-Men?
Yeah, the one that was basically Phoenix.
Oh, Last Stand. I never actually saw that one.
All right, it's basically Phoenix. Let me tell you, it sucked.
Oh, really?
It sucked because compared to this, it freaking sucked.
Mm-hmm.
The newer version, Phoenix, was better.
Okay, with the younger X-Men.
Yeah, the reason why I'm bringing up that movie is because with the animated series did a better depiction of the Phoenix. In fact, they even said this in the honest trailer for the X-Men animated series, where they were like, they did the most faithful adaptation of the Phoenix Saga of all time.
Right.
And the thing about the show that I kind of do enjoy also is that it's very dated in that people are still using like VCRs.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, they have like the advanced technology like Cerebro and floating hover chairs, but they're all using like, ancient technology like VR, like you said, VCR.
It's the same thing in like Batman the animated series because Gotham has like blimps, Tommy guns, but Batman has the Bat computer that still uses dial-up internet, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, how it's like, how we thought the like future technology was going to look like back in the day.
It didn't look that different. It didn't look that different. In fact, if anything, we surpassed the technology of the X-Men and Batman.
Right. Also, I gotta point out something here about the character designs are so cool in this series. I love how they're so close to the comic book characters. Like when you showed me, Jared showed me the comic book for Days of Future Past, and it felt like the characters were just lifted straight off the page.
It's like here.
Right.
Because when they made the characters, they used these exact designs.
That's so cool. It feels so nice, like seeing those characters right off of that. There is one gripe I have though, is that look, a couple things I noticed with just the characters. They're all so great, but Professor Xavier has like the biggest like I don't know, like eyebrows or like
a unibrow or something like that.
I don't know where his eyebrows are so enlarged. He has like a shadow over his face. He looks like so funny, like he's like super angry all the time, or like a Neanderthal or something. I think it's really funny, but yeah.
Hang on, I'll pull it up. He does look super angry. Jeez.
Yes, I know.
Noticed. You know what's kind of funny? He kind of has the Magneto symbol in his eyebrows.
I know. Yes, pull it up. Show it so everyone can see, so they don't think I'm crazy.
Look at this.
Oh boy. Yes, I know. I'm not sure. Like it's like part eyebrow, but also like maybe like a shadow or something.
Doesn't it look like he has the Magneto emblem?
I know. He's got some wicked eyebrows. He's got some eyebrows on fleek with Xavier. I mean, he doesn't have any other hair on his head, so I guess he goes overboard on the eyebrows.
That's great. I love that.
So he's cool. There's a second thing I noticed, and I have to bring it up, is I did not realize Wolverine was like a midget until I watched the show. You didn't know he was actually, because he's actually that short in the comics. Right. I didn't know that because I'm used to like Hugh Jackman's kind of like a pretty tall dude. So he's in the live action, he's a bit taller. But I didn't realize like the actual version of Wolverine in the comics is rather short, and seeing him next to like Cyclops and other people. Let's see, yeah, even there they kind of he's kind of tallish. Right. They make him tallish to make him seem like, more like, important. But when I saw the group photo, I'm not sure if you can find one, with Wolverine next to some of the other X-Men, the original animated series, he's like almost half their height. He's like so short. It's funny. Yeah, I guess they sort of embellish his height because he wouldn't be that intimidating if he was like a little tiny guy with claws. Right. So that was kind of something I noticed about some of the characters. I thought it was funny. Is there any character that you really like their design, or Cyclops? Cyclops. I like this design the most because I'm not a big fan of the whole head condom thing that completely covers his hair and everything. Right. I like the hair popping out. Yeah. And but I will say the character's design that I love the most of all of them. I like Cyclops because it looks like more he's like a tactical leader. But I love Rogue's design. Oh, okay. Look at that. She's got the jacket, cool. The high hair from the 90s, the white streak. Yeah, I'm not sure what the white streak's going on, but it looks cool. They tried to explain that apparently in the movies, like she absorbed Wolverine's powers, and for some reason it gave her a white streak. I'm like, this is dumb, guys. Just say she likes to style her hair. But yeah, I like this Rogue a lot more than the one that was in the movies, because the ones in the movies was kind of useless. Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. Yeah, no, Rogue's a great character. I love the lineup for the team, the X-Men in the series is really solid. They all work together really well. Okay, so I'll ask this then. In this animated series specifically, who do you ship? Do you ship Wolverine with Jean Grey, or do you ship Cyclops with Jean Grey? Specifically in this series, like in this universe. That's a good question, honestly, because I've been throwing this around. Now, this is pre-Emma Frost, so I'm not gonna indulge into that because obviously I ship Emma Frost and Cyclops. That's me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in this continuity, before that was established, I would honestly have to go Cyclops and Jean Grey, because Wolverine's kind of a stalker, and that the meme of him with the picture and the full get up. He's like stroking the picture. I'm like, oh, come on, dude. That's kind of weird. I remember the other meme where I think it's Cyclops and Jean Grey kissing in the background. Oh yeah, he's like, and he's just like. That was a meme last year when DC was like having all their announcements and Marvel was dead silent, and over Cyclops and Jean Grey, it was DC, and then Wolverine, Marvel fans, and they're like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, of that too. By the way, speaking of shipping, did you know that Gambit and Rogue are a couple in this? Really? And they are in the comics now too. Oh, okay. Gambit and Rogue. Yeah, I saw that like a little bit they had going on there. I thought Gambit was kind of more, it seemed to be, he was just trying to talk to all the girls, but like he's like, he's kind of like the flirtatious guy who always gets turned down and everything, but I did see a little bit of connection between them. Yeah. By the way, for your own notification, here is Rogue stealing Ms. Marvel's powers. Oh, okay.
They showed
Interesting.
that. Yeah, and that's how she got her powers. And here's the green outfit that I mentioned before. Here's a better view of it. This was her original outfit when she first showed up in comics.
Mm.
Obviously, she looked a lot more dweeby back then. And this was also when it was established a little more that Rogue has like a deep Southern accent, which the girl they cast in the original X-Men movies does not communicate that well. I noticed that when I was rewatching it. I'm like, oh man, I like the animated Rogue a lot more.
She has like a really, really deep South accent. You get like, but it's great.
Yeah, it gives her more character.
Yeah, it separates her from other people.
Here's Gambit and Rogue.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm like, it makes her not generic white girl number 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was really cool. Oh, and okay, what do you think of like from what you've seen so far of Xavier's and Magneto's relationship in this? Like, they're usually enemies, but I watched an episode with you with the Days of Future Past. I also watched that arc with Jared, and we saw where Magneto actually ends up saving Xavier in it and helping out a little bit because they saved him.
They've never really been enemies. They've been just, I guess, to minimize what they really are. It's like friends that have a disagreement. But ultimately, they have a position because they both ultimately know that both want what's best for mutant kind. They both want mutant kind to endure and survive. It's just they disagree on how to get to that survival.
I see. So, is there a Brotherhood of Mutants in this show, or I'm not? Or does he work mostly on his own? From what he has a couple of
allies, which would be like Juggernaut and who else? And Mystique. I was kind of drawing a blank. Oh yeah, here we go. I think it's called the Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah. Here's a picture of his team. Right there.
I see. Okay.
Which is kind of weird considering this dude right here, the Native American, he was actually an X-Men. So I'm like, that's odd. And I don't think Blob shows up in this series because that's just so weird. What's your mutant power? I'm just fat.
Is that what he says?
No, but that's his power pretty much. I'm like, what?
Right. I wonder, okay, was there anything in this series that they changed significantly from the comics that you remember so far? Like a character or
the most noticeable change is that is when they made Bishop the guy who went back in time in Days of Future Past instead of Kitty Pryde. That was the most observable change from me, where I was like, But I liked how they played it off, where like he's hunting down Gambit. I like they made that, and it's like I said before, when they did change things, it wasn't like they changed it and it got worse. If anything, it got better because they can't go 100% adapting from the comics because ultimately they have to make some changes to make it interesting, and they definitely succeed in doing that. Now let me ask you.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go first.
Okay. I was gonna. All right, you go first. Go ahead.
I was actually gonna ask you what are some of your favorite storylines that in the animated series, like kind of like all right, top 5.
Days of Future Past. Actually, no. Phoenix, obviously. Days of Future Past. The Legacy Virus, which is again the mutant AIDS thing. I liked the Mr. Sinister arc because it's basically him kidnapping Cyclops and Jean Grey because he thinks they'll provide him the DNA for the perfect mutant. And then I like the one where we get Rogue's origin because then we see Carol Danvers when she was cool,
right,
and not an annoying, boring character. And then we also get Rogue's origin, because apparently Mystique was like her surrogate mom. To the point where Mystique raised her. She didn't actually give birth to Mystique, but it was like she was like the mom who raised her. We also got Archangel, by the way. I forgot to mention him in there. And they showed
he was in there?
Yeah, they showed he was the actual Angel character, and then Apocalypse got to him and turned him into Archangel.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh man, they really kept. Okay, so here's what I wanted to ask you. Of what you've seen, where does this rank with Justice League?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because I have some, even though I haven't watched that much of it, I have some fond memories of Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I would put I really have to say they're on equal level. I know Justice League has some really nice animation, like really sleek, but there is something I like about this vintage animation style that looks great. So those are hard to compete. They're pretty equal. But in terms of the storylines, the animated series of X-Men, I would say, is on the same level as Justice League. Like, they have some really great storylines going on there. Like, it'd be really hard to say, but I think some people might say that Justice League is like above it just because it's like, newer and better animation. But honestly,
and
I
it's
have
the
to say
Justice League.
yeah, exactly. I have to say they're at least on the same level. I can't say just yet if maybe one is better than the other, but I really enjoyed the X-Men series. I think it's like up in the ranking with Justice League.
I agree. I definitely agree. It's up there because it's one of those like generation defining shows, which is kind of funny because in the 90s we had like 5 generation defining shows. We had Batman, the Spider-Man series, both Justice Leagues. It was like that. The 90s were like the golden age of superhero animation. So it is kind of hard to pick among and between the two.
Right.
Let's see, what else? Okay. Of the characters that you saw, who is your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question. My favorite. I mean, I really like Cyclops. I thought, I really enjoyed his character, especially because I watched it through not Days of Future Past, but the Dark Phoenix saga, seeing him, because Jean Grey was also the central character, but he was the one having to deal with a lot of the problems that were going on, and seeing his response to different, problems that were showing up and choices he'd have to make, I felt like was really incredible. Like, I really enjoyed like how he handled the situation, and seeing him in action and fight, seeing him have like the mental battle, and having like a heart, like he actually had emotion and cared for Jean Grey. Like, I thought he was really well portrayed in the arc I saw.
Yeah, because it adds to adding to that fact, they were married at that point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they got married in the series, and obviously Wolverine was like really pissed off about that because it's Wolverine.
Well, that's kind of funny because like Wolverine was kind of like still kind of cared for her. Remember, like he wanted to be the one to die for her.
Yep. What's kind of funny is whenever Jean wants to die in the comics, whenever she's like being taken over by the Phoenix, she always goes to Wolverine because she knows he'll do it without hesitating.
Oh man.
And I'm like, that is cold. Now, here's a question I have for you. Okay, so it's no secret that Lad's not really a big fan of the mature like storytelling. What I mean by that is that he doesn't like anything like really like graphic and gory in his comics, and and to each his own. How do you think the way this show handles that stuff? Because it is dealing with some very like current themes and very like I guess mature and like adult air quotes.
Yeah. No, I thought it obviously because it's like it's a little way back. What is this, the 70s you said, right? No, 90s. Sorry. 90s you said, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like a little bit more regulated on what they can put on the TV, right? But I think it still did a really great job of having some deep themes and tough questions without being overly graphic. So I really enjoyed that. I know maybe some people would like more battling and violence in it, but I thought it did a really great job, and it was exactly what like I would want from like a superhero show that I'll take this, and then Jared can take Titans instead.
Yeah, because this is way different than Titans. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another series I think you might also like it is Wolverine and the X-Men, because it's kind of a I guess kind of a more modern thing. Obviously, the difference between Wolverine, the X-Men, and the X-Men animated series is that the animated series is actually adapting comic book storylines. The other one is just more or less not doing that. So I guess there's more of that. But I would say, by the way, I love Storm's like costume because it's like all completely white with the X things up there. And I love her character because she's basically like, come to me, lightning, and fry our enemies. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, she's kind of dramatic.
Well, she does think she's a goddess.
That's true. That's true.
That was how they recruited her. She was in Africa being a goddess, and then they're like, "You're actually a mutant. You're not a deity."
Yeah. Yep. You know, I had to bring this up because I felt like I really loved Cyclops in this series. I thought like he might be my favorite, but I didn't realize until we started doing, I think maybe like X-Men trivia or X-Men characters we were discussing a couple episodes ago. I didn't realize that Cyclops is one of the most hated X-Men characters in the comics.
Recently, because here's what happened with that. So they did Avengers versus X-Men, which is what everyone gets Phoenix powers, and then he proceeds to kill Professor Xavier.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And then he becomes an a-hole, I'll admit that, and then starts like a mutant revolution and stuff, and starts behaving sort of not like a hero. But see, here's the thing about Cyclops is that he also gets a bad rap because he can kind of be a boring character because he's like the military dude that's like all like orders or orders and stuff. He's kind of like the Captain America. He's essentially the X-Men Captain America.
I see.
Which I like that. That's part of why I like the character too. But see, here's the thing. Yeah, he is kind of like one of the most hated X-Men because he has been kind of an a-hole in the past. So
I know, yeah, because I read about that, the fact that he got Xavier killed, but like when it happened, and like I didn't realize, I thought like, oh yeah, Cyclops. I remember him from like, you know, a little bit I knew of the animated series and thinking of promotional movies and stuff. I was like, oh, Cyclops must be the leader of the X-Men and the most popular one. And then I looked it up and I realized he's actually one of the most hated X-Men as of, more recent times. So that was kind of surprising.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a recent thing. It's a thing that I still don't really get because and that's what Hickman has tried to like reverse per se. I mean, here's the thing. The X-Men kind of have been very hostile to the non-mutant world during the whole Hickman run. And I feel like that's what they're going to change now that he's leaving, because Inferno, I'm calling it's going to be the end of Krakoa. Based upon what I've been seeing, because the group that governs Krakoa has been keeping a lot of secrets, not only from the people, but from themselves, from each other on the council. And that's not going to end well. Some pretty big secrets too, particularly Professor X and Magneto. They've been keeping one huge secret that is going to destroy everything.
Really? That's actually kind of cool.
So the whole idea is Moira McTaggart is the one who sets the whole thing in motion. So what happens is everyone thinks she's dead because she fakes her own death and everything. But no, she's actually orchestrating everything behind the scenes. And the thing is, Mystique is working with Xavier because he'll bring her wife back to life. Her wife can like see the future. So McTaggart is like, oh no, we cannot allow anyone in the future, anyone with precognitive abilities to come back to life. So what they're basically telling her is, oh yeah, after the next mission we'll bring her back. After the next mission we'll bring her back. So they keep delaying it, and to the point where I think Mystique is gonna be the one to burn everything to the ground. And plus the fact, yeah, it's not going to work out that well.
So in terms of, the animated series right now, you said you're on like season 3 or so.
Hang on, I'll check them. As a matter of fact, right now I'll pull up Disney Plus to see where am I on here, because I know I'm not. I don't think I'm on season 4 yet. I mean, it all blends together because it's a good show. It's like I really haven't been keeping track of what season I'm on. There was a period where I was counting down to the Phoenix. I was like, I got another season until I get to this. Come on,
right?
Speed it up, people.
Really fun. That was fun watching it together because we like sat down, had pizza, and like watched it, and I was like, this is really great.
All right, so I am on half. I'm about 3/4 done with season 3, and there's 5 seasons.
Okay, so you're making your way. You're making your way through it. That's really good. So
yep.
Wow, so that means you're like, just past halfway through the series right now, which is really cool.
Yeah. My plan is to watch the entire, because here's the thing. Ever since I got Disney Plus, there's been all these Marvel animated shows that I've been dying to see. So I'm like, oh, what the hell? It's here.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Same thing for like the Batman animated series. I watch that every day, pretty much.
Right.
Which we will be covering in Under Two Capes.
Yeah, that's one that we do have to cover. I'm
sorry, I'm sorry, go on, lad.
So in this series with the characters, do you feel like the X-Men, we see them more as a central team? Sometimes in the comics, I've seen the X-Men more of like the entire mansion. There's like 100 X-Men or so running around, but in this one, it definitely seems like a smaller group. Do you think that works better for TV show and stuff, or would you like more X-Men characters popping up, but that would cause the core team to not have as good of a character development in the process?
So in other words, do you want me to do it like they do in JL, kind of?
Right.
They could do it and have character development, because what JL does is it gives like individual episodes to all these different characters. And what the animated series does, X-Men, they do bring in quite like a ton of Marvel characters. I mean, I named up a few: Spider-Man, Captain America, Iceman. And what they do is they sprinkle them into 2 different episodes. So they're technically regulars, but they're not regulars, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I mean, it would be kind of cool if they like at least vary the team's makeup a little bit sometimes, because that's one of the reasons why I loved Justice League Unlimited, is because because of the way they managed that massive roster, is that they only sent small teams on each mission, unless of course it was Darkseid invading, and then it was like all hands on deck, including the supervillains. But the point is that they were able to create like unique teams for each scenario. Like Green Arrow led one, Supergirl led one. She was super young. It was actually kind of cool seeing her in like out of her element. But yeah, I mean, for what it was, I think it was fine the way it is, like a small cast. Because ultimately, here's the thing: X-Men books don't really feature that many, like a massive cast of characters, like say Justice League Unlimited. It's mostly whoever the main team is, and then a couple of characters will be sprinkled in. So in other words, the way that they did with the series is the way they do it.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so let's see what else do I want to bring up for X-Men the animated series. But yeah, once again, it had the most fantastic animated song of all time. One of the best animated intros of all time. I'm like, oh man, yeah, I cannot bring my and if I by accidentally skip the intro, I will rewind the entire episode to watch it again.
It was really fantastic. That is
It's like the one for Justice League Unlimited, which, by the way, I learned Tyler's a big fan of Justice League Unlimited.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, oh, that looks just like it. We were watching the Snyder cut. And it's that shot where they're on top of the reactor, and it's like that big like group shot. He's like, that's just like Justice League Unlimited. I'm like, you watched that show too? Then we had a moment. Yes. We'll have him on to talk about the series. By the way, quick thing that I want to do for the episode, and I will do this tomorrow for Under Two Capes. I am holding the Snyder cut in my hands, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh, yes, in the flesh.
This is so freaking weird to be able to do this. Remember, for 4 years, they were telling me this is a pipe dream. Who's laughing now?
That's right.
And that's ignoring all the BS Warner Brothers has been doing, but that's not what this episode is talking about. But anyway, let's see. Now, here's a question, lad. Do you think this would be a good team lineup for the MCU? If they, in other words, if they brought in the X-Men to the when they bring in the X-Men to the MCU, do you think this would be a good lineup for the X-Men movies?
That's a really excellent question, actually.
And if not, who would you put on the team?
That's a good question. Because we have been, over the last 20 years, we've been used to a certain roster from the X-Men Fox series in the original trilogy and in the, younger movies as well. So when I'm looking at the animated series, I see a couple characters that I don't really recognize. Like Rogue, I didn't remember seeing Rogue as much in the new series. That's a good question. Like, would I want these characters to be the ones in? I think they could really work. I think they could work for the MCU. Like this type of roster for these characters. I feel like it could be a good idea to go back to some classic roots if they're going to reintroduce the X-Men after the Fox universe being completed.
Yeah,
these characters could really work.
That's true. The only person I would put on there now is Emma Frost, just because she's such a core part of the X-Men books now. It's just that obviously the reason why they didn't do it back then is because she wasn't an X-Men back then. She was a bad guy. But that's the only change I would make is put Emma Frost on the team because she's so central as an X-Men leader at that point. Because she's essentially their a backup Cerebro operator. And then so let's see. And then all right. Now let's see what other so now if they do X-Men, now here's the question, and this has been like openly debated among Marvel fans and everything. So they pretty much in this series treat the X-Men like they're separate from the other Marvel heroes.
Right.
Hence is why it takes so long for any other Marvel character to show up, and it's a rare thing. Do you like that more than the X-Men being integrated fully into the Marvel universe? Bear in mind, since they're integrated, we do run into that contradiction where how come you're okay with the Human Torch who can burst himself into flames, but you're not okay with this guy who can do it just because it's a genetic defect?
Right. That's a good question. And because we've been used to over the last 20 years of the X-Men being separate. We've had the Fox movies, doing their own thing the last 20 years or so. And then, we had other movies pop up, like Spider-Man was doing its own thing, separated. Fantastic Four was separated. Ghost Rider separated. Even the MCU, when it finally showed up, was separate from the Fox universe. And I feel like we've gotten used to the X-Men being separate. And you're right, it does work better seeing why people wouldn't trust them if they're separate. Because then, they would just say, well, you're okay with the Hulk and the Human Torch, but you're not okay with, Juggernaut. And like you said, I forget there's a fire character, but I'll just put like Iceman.
Yeah,
the exact
same concept.
Right. Like, why wouldn't they be okay with that instead? So I feel like they do work really. We have seen them work well as their own separate thing. It works. There's a large enough roster of characters that you could make an entire expanded X-Men universe like the MCU without ever leaving the X-Men properties. The only question is, would it be cooler if they were integrated into the larger MCU more fully?
I think what they should do, since they're dealing with the multiverse, start the X-Men movies and have them be on their own Earth. And then once you do, and this is assuming that they do a Secret War style event, then you fold them in. In other words, establish the X-Men world first. Like, get that whole thing the way you want it to be, and then bring them in.
I see.
And then what they could easily do to repair that contradiction is have an event where the people lose faith in people with powers.
Mm-hmm.
Then there you go. It's fixed, because the world doesn't really trust superheroes that much. The ones they do trust are dead.
Right.
If you think about it, Spider-Man is framed for murdering someone, and it's like I'm not sure if people are thrilled with Sam Wilson being Captain America, but the point is that they're not exactly so thrilled with people with powers anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing yet the MCU has done well, is they've sort of solved that issue that the comics have always had.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, for me, I think it's fine if they keep it separate at first and fold it in. I mean, they kind of treat them as they're separate, particularly in the Hickman era run, because they gave them their own island nation. And they
right.
And it's like, whenever the Avengers mention the X-Men, they're like, oh, the X-Men, they're probably doing something on Krakoa. All right, back to what we were doing.
Right. We've seen them for a long while now. We've seen them in the comics, in the TV shows, in the movies. We've seen them as very separate from the rest of the Marvel universe. And maybe it's better that way, you know?
It can be.
It works really well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just works. It works well.
Yeah, and they're a cool enough team, a strong enough team to be able to handle things on their own. It's not like they need the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
But and they're obviously entertaining. I've mentioned that they're pretty much the Marvel book for me. And this is the one that I religiously have gotten into, because if anyone knows me, I'm a DC fan. I've had a lot of trouble trying to find the Marvel book that I've and I mean, it's between Captain America and X-Men. Those are my two, and maybe the Punisher, but that's besides the point. But anyway, all right, X-Men animated series. So let's see. I'm just going through my notes real quick, see if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up.
I've got a question for you then.
Okay.
Since we're talking about, comparing the animated X-Men series to something that we could get in the future, talking about what characters could show up, should they be in a shared universe or not, what storyline would you like to see adapted into live action that has not previously been? Because we've got in Days of Future Past, we've got in Dark Phoenix, but what's like a storyline you would really like to see adapted in live action from what you've seen so far in the animated series?
So it's obviously House of X powers to 10. That one's more likely to happen because when they bring the X-Men to the MCU, most likely they'll go with the most recent era, which is the Hickman era. If it's not that, I'm talking about Second Coming, because then you have like Hope Summers showing up and just destroying Sentinels, which was one of the coolest scenes in that comic ever. Probably, I'm looking through my X-Men collection real quick. Most definitely, if they integrate with the MCU, Avengers versus X-Men.
Avengers versus that would be so crazy if they pulled off something like that.
They would have to do if they would do the Phoenix as the impetus for that conflict. They would have to do the Dark Phoenix movies first, just to establish that it exists, and then they can bring in the Avengers and have them fight. Who? Let me ask you this. I answered this as an episode for the show. Who do you think would win, Avengers or X-Men, if they ever really went to war, and you could pick who won?
Right, Avengers versus X-Men. Okay. I'm gonna put the little asterisk here that the Avengers has to be the actual core lineup that we see in the MCU or in the comic book. Not
the ones that the characters you think of when you think of the Avengers.
Right, not just what they did in the Infinity War and Endgame, where everyone becomes an Avenger, which is really cool for the movie, but they're not actually the traditional roster. I wouldn't put Captain Marvel on the traditional Avengers roster. I mean, she's more of a cosmic hero. I know is on the Avengers, but she's not normally going around Earth rescuing people, is she?
Kind of. She's been on the team before, even when she was Ms. Marvel. I think she was one of the classic Avengers characters.
I see.
But if you want to go by MCU, that's fine. That's totally fine. Like Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk. Hulk's on my opinion, Hulk's the only one that I think would really give the X-Men a run for their money.
Right. Because I'm actually leaning more towards the X-Men. I feel like the X-Men have more characters that are very powerful on their core roster as opposed to the Avengers core roster, which a lot of the heroes are based on tech or acrobatics or spy abilities. The X-Men just have, because they're all powered. Right. The X-Men don't have any of that tech, makes me a superhero thing. They all just have really cool abilities they can shoot lasers or lightning. I think the X-Men could probably beat out the Avengers, but if the Avengers actually called in their expanded roster, they're kind of B team, I would say, with Captain Marvel, other characters, I feel like the Avengers could put a better fight.
Depends on if the X-Men bring in their extended roster, bro. Juggernaut.
Oh yeah.
Scarlet Witch, who controls reality, bro.
Okay, that's just that's OP. I mean, you can't fight against that. How do you fight against that?
Hope Summers, who basically imitates the powers of any mutant around her. Rogue, who 5 mutants can touch her, and she'll have all 5 of their powers at once.
That's pretty cool.
I call it for the X-Men because they're the most godly characters. It's it's the same thing as that debate. Who would win, Justice League or the Avengers? Superman? Right. Do we really have to have this debate when it comes with just Superman alone?
Yeah. Or even just Batman. Just Batman.
He'll figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Prep time. He'll have enough prep time.
Exactly.
No, but yeah, I'm glad you agree with me because the X-Men have the most powerful characters.
Right. I think we would need, but the thing is, the people that would, I guess people can have their opinions. Maybe some other people think the Avengers might be stronger, but just in my opinion, thinking that the X-Men might be stronger than the Avengers, and I think that's okay because the Avengers, are protecting the everyday city from supervillains. They sometimes have bigger missions where they take on greater threats. And yes, they do sometimes fight on a cosmic level. But for the most part, the Avengers are the Earth's mightiest heroes. And I think they don't need to be overpowered like the X-Men are, where X-Men also are mighty heroes of Earth, but they can easily fight on a cosmic level against the Sean Reed, you said, or the alien space people, or fight against other cosmic threats, fighting the Shi'ar, right? I think it's okay if the Avengers are not as OP as the X-Men.
Yeah, it is. But here's how you know the X-Men would win, though. One more thing. House of M. Scarlet Witch literally said no more mutants, and she depowered 90% of the mutant population.
Right. What if she said instead, no more tech-based superheroes?
No more Tony Stark.
Yeah,
everything.
Exactly.
Here's how powerful the Scarlet Witch was. When she went crazy and Avengers disassembled, you know what she did to Iron Man?
What?
All right. So Iron Man was giving a speech. This is when he was the Secretary of Defense and financing the Avengers, because that would totally happen in real life. She basically warped reality so that he was drunk and made an ass of himself. Stark stock tanked, so he couldn't finance the Avengers anymore.
Oh man.
She single-handedly took out the Avengers money supply just by making someone drunk.
Yeah. That's awkward.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, most of the reality warping characters in Marvel are mutants. Even Franklin Richards was a mutant, but he kind of goes back and forth between mutant and non-mutant.
Yes.
So I'm like, yeah, okay, the Avengers are cool, but have you seen these people warp reality? But yeah, I'm glad we're at least a little bit on agreement on that point.
Right.
It's kind of funny going to Avengers 2 and seeing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and going, oh, X-Men, and then it's going, no.
No, don't use bad. Don't use that word. You get us in legal trouble.
Yeah, here's the interesting part. You know, it was kind of screwy for Marvel. So they wanted to have their version of Wonder Woman, but 99% of their most well-known female characters are associated with the X-Men.
Right.
So it's like, by selling off the X-Men movie rights, that's why they had to do Captain Marvel. What they should have done, Rogue, Storm, Marvel Girl. Those have been great movies, but no, they had to do Captain Marvel.
Yep.
Starring Brie Low Energy Larson.
I like Captain Marvel.
Oh boy. But I will say real quick, I'm going to say this on 100 Capes too. So I saw the new What If with Killmonger. I said I would give it a chance and see if it redeemed him in my eyes. It totally did. Oh my gosh, he was great in this. Oh man. I might have to get a Killmonger action figure to put on the shelf right there, because that was dope.
Wow. That's high praise, everyone, from Jared.
He was so the way they wrote him in this was so much better than Black Panther, but they were still advancing the same message / plot as in Black Panther, but they did it in a better way.
That's so cool, because we said that as an individual character he was cool, but you really did not like his motivations.
I like the concept of him. I liked how he was placed in as the antagonist to T'Challa. I thought it was great, but he was written infinitesimally way better in this What If than he was in Black Panther, which is why I'm so happy. Cool. I'm definitely going to do a review of it soon, probably this weekend. Look out for it.
Nice. Yeah, that's
and
really
when
cool. I'm really glad to see you like that.
And when Lad gets caught up, he can come on with me.
Right. Yeah, maybe I'll just skip ahead and watch that one so we can
cover it. It doesn't exactly. It doesn't. You don't have to watch them all in order. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. Considering how many Marvel movies this one affects, it's like, whoa. Now they're starting to get it. How like this one thing remember how I complain about how they kind of change kind of weird things depending on like this one change. In other words, Peggy Carter being in the room changes when the assassin blows the bomb.
Right.
They fixed that issue. They actually have clear cause and effect that eventually leads to the climax of these episodes. So I'm like, oh yes, this is so dope. Yeah, I would skip, watch Marvel Zombies, and then this one. You have to watch Marvel Zombies.
I see.
All right, so yeah, that's that. Well, wouldn't it be great if they introduced the X-Men in What If, because it's canon in the MCU?
Right. That'd be really trippy if they did something like
What
that.
if mutants exist? What if Marvel never sold the rights?
And
that's the title.
Yeah.
We have like Spider-Man, and we have like all the heroes. Well, when they actually did, and all it is the portal scene, except everyone comes through.
Right. What if Mickey was an Avenger?
What if Marvel actually did a DC crossover and it's the Zack Snyder Justice League crew?
Yeah.
And then Captain America's like, oh my gosh, you guys kill people. He's like, Superman just lasered that guy's horn off.
It's like, yeah, that's actually fine.
Oh, don't worry, that's fine. He normally does that. Why does Batman have machine guns on his car? Oh, don't worry, that's a regular occurrence. Why did Wonder Woman chop that dude's head off? What else would you do with a sword?
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So I think that's a good place to leave this episode of the Academy of X-Men. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like, comments, subscribe for other great shows. We do content on Star Wars, which I have some ideas on what we can do for Star Wars. We do a general, what Under Two Capes is, to explain for any new people, it's the general podcast where we talk about like a topic related to comic books, a comic book storyline that we like, Marvel and DC. And then we have like the X-Men show, the Star Wars show. And then like, I'm still thinking about how I'm going to do the news show, or if I may turn that into a Snyder news show, because there's so much coming out on that. And we also have the Halo show. But basically we have a lot of different pop culture shows, all aimed at, if you're coming out of here having no experience with any of these properties whatsoever. We're designed to be the informative resource you go to before you go see an MCU movie, play a Halo game, or anything like that, to make sure you understand like what you're doing. And then you can hear Lad anger me with his hot takes about Batman and Wonder Woman, or the fact that Batman 66 was the most accurate portrayal of Batman.
These aren't hot takes. These are normal common sense that any man or woman would have.
Okay, yeah.
Common sense by Lad Payne.
By Lad what?
Lad, like by Thomas Paine. Lad Payne.
That's good. I didn't get it for a second. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, that's good. I like that. That's a good one. All right. And then whenever we do, like, whenever a movie's coming out, we're going to gear the content more toward that movie. Like, and the Eternals, we'll do an Eternal themed episode when it's coming out. And pretty soon we will be doing a Shang-Chi spoiler review. Lad, have you seen the movie yet?
Not yet, but soon.
All right. See it. It's really good. I loved it. It was really hard. It was really hard to do that spoiler-free review because I've never done one before. So I'm like, can I say this? Can I not say this?
You're just like,
I'm like, oh, this person shows up. I'm like, I almost spoiled it. I was like, I'm still trying to figure out what it means that this. Oh, I can't say that.
Yeah. And then Batman.
And then Batman came through the portal, followed by Gandalf and James McAvoy and Mephisto. And then all of a sudden, the background said it was Mephisto.
Luke Picard.
And Picard and Magneto and Sauron and Saruman and Gollum
and Walt Disney himself comes out of the portal.
Dude, I freaked out when Darkseid came through. And then the Whedon cut Steppenwolf came through yelling "Mother."
Right. Yeah.
That was what Tyler and I were chanting. We're like saying every time Steppenwolf said anything, we would say "Mother."
Mother.
Because even he didn't know what the hell Steppenwolf was talking about with Mother. By the way, I'm gonna explain that real quick. So in the Mother boxes, the soul of Steppenwolf's actual mother is trapped in this. That's what we were saying when Cyborg was tearing the Mother box apart, and you saw those strange creatures crawling over him.
Yeah,
that's why he was calling it Mother. It's just Whedon was an idiot and decided not to explain that.
I see.
I knew that, but obviously Zach thought that's stupid. Why would I have him just say Mother for no reason?
Yeah.
Anyway. That's what Jared ran for right now. By the way, still a Jared prediction that we will get the Snyderverse in some point in the future. It's gonna most likely we're gonna get news about it when the merger is finalized. Because they did say they're orienting it more, they're orienting their content more toward what the fans want, which is the way it should be, because they are a business ultimately. And we're offering to give you money to make these movies. Anyway, I don't want to get into a Snyder Cut rant. I'm saving that one for the Under Two Capes episode this week, where I will have a guest and we'll talk about Snyder Cut. Live, if you want to come on, you're perfectly welcome to if you're available. But yeah, so okay, that's what that's all I'm gonna say on the X-Men animated series. All in all, fantastic animated series. It's up again. It's like tied for my number one favorite animated series is tied among Batman, this, and the two Justice League series. It's I cannot pick among those four. Technically three, but JLU is kind of a separate series from JL. Oh, also 5, Young Justice.
Right.
Which we have to talk about Young Justice soon. We'll do that before the new season comes out, which should be actually, I think in October it's coming out. Which should be pretty dope. All right. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We will see you next week. Class is out of session. See you later.
Yep.